Welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey into the misty borderlands between waking and sleeping. Tonight, we'll discover the quiet rhythms of rest itself, alongside the ancient Greek god who made drowsiness his divine calling. Whether you're settling into bed or already drifting toward deep sleep, I'm grateful you're here to explore these peaceful corners of mythology with me. Tell me in the comments, what helps you fall asleep most easily at night? It's a lovely thought, all of us finding our way to deep sleep through these drowsy stories from ages past. In the deepest cave of the underworld, where no sunlight has ever touched stone, Hypnos stirs gently from his own restful slumber as another day begins in the realm of eternal sleep. You open your eyes slowly, feeling the familiar weight of drowsiness that never quite leaves this sacred place. The cave around you breathes with a rhythm older than time itself, each exhale of cool air carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers that grow only in darkness. Your bed, woven from the softest sheep's wool and stuffed with down from 1,000 swans, cradles you in perfect comfort. The ivory headboard, carved with images of poppies and flowing water, catches the dim light from the eternal twilight that fills your domain. As the god of sleep, your daily routine begins not with urgency, but with the gentle stretching that comes after perfect rest. You flex your fingers, feeling the silver rings that adorn them, each one inscribed with symbols of dreams and night. Your robes, darker than the deepest midnight, seem to absorb what little light exists in this peaceful realm. The fabric feels cool against your skin, woven from threads that shimmer like starlight on water. You rise from your bed with the fluid grace of someone who has never known true weariness, your bare feet touching the smooth obsidian floor. The stone feels neither warm nor cold, but perfectly neutral, as if it exists in that perfect temperature between waking and sleeping. Around you, the cave stretches in all directions, its walls disappearing into gentle shadows that seem to breathe and pulse with their own quiet life. The river Lethe flows nearby, its waters making the softest sound. Not quite a babble, not quite a whisper, but something that exists perfectly between the two. You walk to its banks, where the water runs crystal clear and carries with it the gift of forgetfulness. Not the harsh forgetting of loss or pain, but the gentle letting go that comes before peaceful sleep. You cup the water in your palms, feeling its cool touch against your skin, and drink deeply. The taste is like nothing earthly, neither sweet nor bitter, but clean and empty and perfectly refreshing. Your morning ablutions are unhurried and methodical. You wash your face in the sacred waters, feeling the day's drowsiness settle into your bones like a familiar friend. Your dark hair, long and flowing, catches droplets of water that seem to glow with their own inner light. You run your fingers through it, feeling its silk-like texture, and notice how it moves like liquid shadow in the dim light of your realm. The Garden of Hypnos spreads before you as you step from your cave, a landscape that defies the rules of the upper world. Here, plants grow in perpetual twilight, their leaves a soft grey-green that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Poppies bloom everywhere, not the bright red of earthly fields, but deep purples and midnight blues, their petals heavy with the nectar of dreams. You bend to smell them, their fragrance filling your lungs with a sweetness that makes your eyelids grow heavy, even though you are the god of sleep himself. Your first task of each day is to tend these sacred flowers. You move through the garden with slow, deliberate steps, your robes trailing behind you like liquid shadow. Each poppy receives your gentle attention, a touch here, a whispered word there, encouragement to grow ever more potent in their ability to bring peaceful rest to mortals above. The soil feels rich and loamy beneath your fingers, dark earth that has never known drought or flood, only the perfect conditions for growing dreams. The horn of plenty sits at the garden's heart, carved from a single piece of black marble, and always overflowing with poppy seeds that glisten like tiny jewels. You gather these seeds with careful hands, placing them in a pouch made from fabric so fine it feels like touching air itself. These seeds will become dreams, some destined for kings, others for shepherds, each one crafted to bring exactly the kind of sleep its recipient needs most. As you work, you become aware of your twin brother Thanatos stirring in his own nearby domain. Death and sleep have always been close companions, and you sense his presence like a gentle echo of your own nature. While he brings the final rest, you offer the nightly reprieve, the temporary escape from the weight of consciousness. You do not see him this morning, he keeps his own schedule, but you feel the comfort of his proximity, the way twins always do. Your assistant spirits begin to gather as the morning progresses, beings of mist and shadow who help you in your daily work. They appear not with fanfare but gradually, like fog forming over still water. These spirits have no names as mortals understand them, but you know each by their particular essence. One specialises in the dreams of children, bringing them visions of warm milk and mother's lullabies. Another crafts the deep, dreamless sleep that heals the sick and wounded. A third weaves nightmares for those whose guilt demands such dreams. Though even these dark visions serve the purpose of eventual peace, together you begin the day's great work, the preparation of sleep for every living being in the world above. This is not dramatic magic requiring thunderbolts or grand gestures, but quiet, methodical craft work that requires infinite patience and attention to detail. You sit at your great loom, where threads of silver and gold and deep midnight blue stretch across a frame carved from wood that grew in the first forest. The loom itself is a marvel of divine craftsmanship, its frame inlaid with mother of pearl that seems to glow with captured moonlight. The threads you work with are not ordinary fibre, but strands of pure sleep itself, some light and airy for brief naps, others heavy and dense for the deep rest that comes after great labour. Your fingers move across these threads with practised skill, weaving patterns that will become the dreams of farmers and philosophers, children and elders, lovers and hermits. Each thread requires different handling. The gossamer strands that bring dreams of flying must be kept barely taut, ready to lift the sleeper's spirit into weightless joy. The sturdier threads that carry memories of home need to be woven with gentle tension, creating dreams that comfort the homesick and weary. The darkest threads, reserved for those who need to confront their fears in the safety of sleep, require the most careful attention. Too loose, and the dreams lack meaning. Too tight, and they become unbearable. As you weave, you hum, not a melody exactly, but a sound that exists somewhere between music and the rhythm of slow breathing. This humming vibrates through the cave, through the garden, through the very foundations of your realm. It is said that sensitive mortals sometimes hear this sound in the moments just before sleep takes them, a gentle invitation to let go of the day's burdens. The morning's work involves hundreds of individual dreams, each one tailored to its intended recipient. You craft a dream for a young mother, exhausted from tending her infant, in which she walks through endless fields of soft grass while gentle hands tend to all her needs. For an old fisherman, you weave visions of calm seas and nets heavy with silver fish, his boat rocking gently on waters that mirror the sky. A merchant receives dreams of roads that lead always homeward, no matter how far he travels. Your fingers never tire in this work, but you take breaks nonetheless, walking again through your garden to clear your mind between particularly complex dreams. Sometimes you pause at the pool of reflection, where the surface shows not your face but the peaceful, sleeping faces of mortals around the world. You see infants curled in their mother's arms, their tiny faces perfect in repose. You see labourers finally able to rest after long days of toil, their calloused hands relaxed at last. You see lovers sleeping side by side, their breathing synchronised in the intimacy of shared rest. The pool also shows you those who struggle with sleep, the anxious, the grieving, the physically uncomfortable. For these you must craft special attention. You dip your finger in the pool and send ripples across its surface, each ripple carrying a gentle suggestion. softer pillows, cooler air, or simply the gradual slowing of racing thoughts until they match the peaceful rhythm of your realm. Midday in the underworld brings no harsh sun, but rather a subtle shift in the quality of darkness, from the deep purple-black of night towards something that might charitably be called twilight. This is when you take your own rest, not because you need it as mortals do, but because rest is your nature and your joy. You return to your bed but do not sleep deeply. Instead, you enter a state that mortals might call meditation, but which for you is simply being fully yourself. In this peaceful state, you become aware of every act of sleep happening in the world above. Somewhere a cat curls up in a patch of sunlight streaming through a window. A bear settles into its winter den, preparing for months of healing slumber. Night shift workers in distant lands pull blankets over their heads to block out unwelcome daylight. Each of these acts of rest connects to your essence, feeding the great tapestry of sleep that binds all living things. You feel the approach of evening in the upper world through this connection, the gradual winding down of daily activities, the lighting of lamps and candles, the preparation for night's embrace. Mothers begin to sing lullabies to fussy children. Shepherds drive their flocks toward shelter. Tavern keepers bank their fires, and merchants count their coins one final time before storing them safely away. Rising from your midday rest, you return to the loom for the evening's work, the most important time of your daily cycle. Now you must weave the dreams that will serve as bridges between one day and the next, helping mortals process the experiences they've gathered and prepare their souls for whatever tomorrow might bring. These dreams require your deepest attention and greatest skill. A warrior who has seen too much violence receives dreams of peaceful valleys where swords become plowshares and battle cries become songs of harvest. A scholar overwhelmed by the weight of the knowledge dreams of simple pleasures, the taste of fresh bread, the warmth of sunlight on skin, the laughter of children at play. A mother who has lost a child is given dreams not of her loss, but of beautiful gardens where love planted continues to bloom in forms beyond her understanding. Your assistant spirits work more actively now, carrying completed dreams up through the layers of earth and stone to the world above. They move like gentle breezes, invisible to mortal eyes, but felt as the sudden heaviness of eyelids or the inexplicable urge to find a comfortable place to rest. You watch them go with satisfaction, knowing that each carries with it a small portion of the perfect peace that defines your realm. The evening's work also includes tending to those who resist sleep, the insomniacs and the anxiety-ridden, the new mothers and the night shift workers who must stay alert when their bodies cry out for rest. For these challenging cases, you employ subtler arts. Rather than overwhelming them with drowsiness, you offer tiny moments of micro-rest, the brief closing of eyes that refreshes without bringing full sleep, the relaxation of shoulders that have been held tense all day, the softening of jaw muscles clenched in determination. As night deepens in the world above, your cave fills with a different quality of energy. The river Lethe flows more swiftly, its waters carrying away the day's accumulated stress and worry from mortal minds. The poppies in your garden open wider, releasing more of their sleep-inducing fragrance into the eternal twilight of your domain. Even the obsidian walls seem to pulse more gently, as if the entire realm breathes in harmony with the sleeping world above. You craft dreams now for the deep sleepers, those who will not wake until dawn breaks over their particular corner of the earth. These dreams can be longer, more complex, taking the dreamer on journeys through landscapes of memory and imagination. A sailor dreams of islands made of clouds, where he can walk on air and breathe underwater. A baker dreams of ovens that need no fire, where loaves rise by pure intention, and the smell of bread becomes visible as golden ribbons in the air. The most delicate work comes with crafting dreams for children. Their minds are more open to the strange logic of sleep, but also more vulnerable to nighttime fears. You weave for them dreams of flying horses and talking animals, of treasure chests that contain not gold but hugs and laughter, of magical friends who appear just when loneliness threatens to intrude. These dreams must be strong enough to chase away monsters under the bed, but gentle enough not to overstimulate young imaginations. Your fingers move faster now across the loom, creating a symphony of threads that sing softly as they interweave. The sound is barely audible, like wind through summer leaves or water over smooth stones, but it carries within it all the peace and rest that your realm represents. This is the music of sleep itself, the fundamental rhythm that underlies all dreams and all restful slumber. As you work, you occasionally pause to sip from a goblet that never empties, filled with nectar that tastes of honey and lavender, and something indefinable that mortals might call contentment. The goblet itself is carved from a single amethyst, its purple surface catching and holding the gentle light of your realm. Each sip renews your energy not with stimulation but with deeper calm, the way a perfect pillow renews the sleeper's embrace of rest. The night reaches its deepest point, and you sense the approach of dawn still hours away in the mortal world. This is when you do your most important work, weaving the dreams that will help mortals prepare for the coming day. These are not prophetic visions, but rather dreams that restore courage, renew hope, and remind the dreamer of their own inner strength. A young woman afraid of an upcoming marriage dreams of gardens where every flower represents a possibility for happiness. An old man facing his final illness dreams of young hands reaching down to help him climb a gentle hill, at whose summit waits not an end but a beginning he cannot yet comprehend. A child who has been bullied dreams of discovering that he can speak the language of birds, who tell him secrets that make him smile even in his sleep. Your realm grows quieter as the night progresses, the activity of dream weaving settling into a steady, meditative rhythm. The assistant spirits move less frequently now, most of the night's dreams having been distributed to their intended recipients. You continue working at your loom, but at a more leisurely pace, savouring each thread and taking time to appreciate the intricate patterns you create. The river Lethe seems to slow as well, its waters reflecting more clearly the dim light that emanates from the walls of your cave. Sometimes you see faces in these reflections, mortals who have found particularly peaceful sleep, their expressions serene and untroubled. These faces never last long in the water, appearing and disappearing like gentle ripples, but each one brings you satisfaction. This is what your daily work achieves. These moments of perfect rest in lives that might otherwise know little peace. You think of your mother, Nyx, the goddess of night, who gave birth to you in the primordial darkness before stars learned to shine. She visits rarely, her duties keeping her busy painting darkness across the sky each evening. But when she does come, you walk together through your garden in comfortable silence. She understands the quiet satisfaction you find in your work, the deep contentment that comes from serving the needs of every living thing. Your father, Erebus, the personification of shadow, influences your work in subtler ways. From him you inherited the ability to move unseen and unnoticed, to slip into mortal consciousness without causing alarm. The shadows in your cave are not empty darkness, but living extensions of his presence, and they help you understand which mortals need gentle dreams and which require the deeper healing that comes with completely dreamless sleep. As you continue your work, you become aware of the changing quality of sleep in the world above. The deepest part of night brings different challenges than the drowsy evening hours. Now you must tend to those who wake in the small hours, minds racing with worries that seem manageable by daylight, but loom large in darkness. For these troubled souls, you weave dreams that don't quite form, half-glimpsed visions that suggest rather than insist, gentle enough not to jar the sleeper fully awake, but persistent enough to gradually replace anxiety with calm. A merchant who has awakened, worried about his debts, receives fleeting dream images of scales that always balance, of roads that lead to new opportunities, of hands extended in friendship and assistance. He may not remember these images when morning comes, but they will influence his mood, making him more likely to notice genuine opportunities and less likely to be paralysed by fear. The loom beneath your fingers has produced a tapestry of enormous complexity by now, its patterns shifting and flowing like water made solid. In its threads you can read the story of a single night's sleep across the entire world, the restful slumber of the just, the troubled dreams of the guilty, the healing sleep of the sick, the prophetic dreams of the spiritually gifted. Each thread connects to others in ways that mortals could never comprehend, creating a web of shared unconsciousness that binds all living beings together in their most vulnerable hours. You rise from the loom to stretch, feeling the pleasant ache that comes from hours of focused work. Walking again through your garden, you notice that some of the poppies have closed their petals, their work for the night nearly complete. Others remain open, still needed to provide rest for those in distant lands where dawn is still far away. The eternal nature of your realm means you experience all time zones simultaneously, your consciousness spanning the globe to serve sleepers in every corner of the world. The pool of reflection shows you glimpses of the coming dawn in various mortal locations, the gradual lightening of eastern skies, the first stirrings of early rising birds, the unconscious shifting of sleepers as their bodies begin the slow process of returning to wakefulness. You do not hurry this process, but you help it along with gentle influences, dreams that gradually become lighter and more pleasant, the slow withdrawal of the deeper sleep to prevent jarring awakenings. For some mortals you craft transition dreams, visions that bridge the gap between sleep and waking consciousness. A farmer dreams of sunrise over his fields, the dream timing perfectly with the actual dawn so that he wakes naturally with the light. A mother dreams of her children's laughter, then gradually becomes aware that the sound is real, her family already stirring in the rooms around her. A baker dreams of ovens warming, then wakes to realise that his internal clock has prepared him to begin another day of service to his community. Your work never truly ends, as somewhere in the world it is always bedtime for someone, but the intensity of your labour varies with the great cycles of day and night. As dawn approaches in your awareness, not in the underworld, where it is always twilight, but in the world above where mortals live their brief, bright lives, you allow yourself a few moments of pure rest. Returning to your bed, you lie back against the soft pillows and let your consciousness expand to encompass every sleeping being under your influence. For a moment you experience what they experience, the warmth of blankets, the softness of mattresses, the gentle rhythm of breathing that carries them deeper into restorative rest. You feel their dreams as gossamer touches against your awareness, each one a small masterpiece of symbolic meaning and emotional healing. This is perhaps the most satisfying part of your daily routine, this moment when you can appreciate the full scope of your work, seeing how individual dreams connect to form a vast network of healing and renewal that spans the globe. Every nightmare soothed, every anxiety calmed, every body restored through restful sleep contributes to the greater harmony of existence. Your work may seem simple compared to the dramatic interventions of other gods, but you understand its fundamental importance. Sleep, after all, is when mortals are most themselves, freed from the masks they wear during waking hours, able to process their deepest fears and highest aspirations in the safe space of dreams. In serving their sleep, you serve their truest selves, helping them find the peace and restoration they need to face another day of conscious existence. There is honour in this quiet service, dignity in this gentle influence. As your awareness gradually contracts back to your own peaceful realm, you notice that the river Lethe has returned to its usual gentle flow, carrying away the last remnants of the night's troubles. The poppies in your garden sway gently in a breeze that exists only in this sacred space, their petals beginning to close as their evening's work draws to an end. Your assistant spirits have returned to their own rest, their forms dissolving back into the mist and shadow from which they came. You close your eyes, not to sleep as mortals do, but to enter the deepest level of your own divine nature. In this state, you become one with the concept of rest itself, your consciousness merging with the fundamental force that allows all living things to restore themselves through sleep. This is not unconsciousness, but rather a perfect awareness of the role you play in the great cycle of existence. The necessary pause between breaths, the gentle darkness between days, the healing silence between heartbeats. But even in this deepest meditation, a part of your attention remains alert to those who might need your special intervention. The sick child whose fever breaks only with perfect rest. The grieving widow who finds peace only in dreams of her lost love. The troubled king whose kingdom depends on the wisdom that comes through prophetic sleep. Your service never completely ceases, for the need for rest is as constant as the need for breath itself. And as the eternal twilight of your realm continues its gentle pulse, as the river Lethe continues its soft murmuring, as the poppies continue their quiet blooming in soil that never knows drought, you rest in the knowledge that your work matters deeply, even if mortals rarely think to thank the God who grants them the precious gift of peaceful sleep. Yet somewhere in the deeper shadows of your realm, you sense a stirring that speaks of mysteries yet to be explored. The question of what dreams might visit those who sleep for far longer than a single night, and what happens when divine sleep extends not for hours but for seasons, years, or even centuries. Chapter 2. Endymion, the shepherd's endless slumber. The gentle humming that vibrates through Hypnos' realm begins to fade as your divine work reaches its natural pause. But rather than returning to your own rest, you find your attention drawn to something unusual happening in the mortal world above. Through the pool of reflection, you observe a disturbance in the normal patterns of sleep, not the chaotic disruption of nightmares or insomnia, but something far more intriguing. On Mount Latmus, bathed in moonlight of extraordinary intensity, a young shepherd lies in slumber so profound that it rivals your own divine rest. This is not ordinary sleep, you realize with growing fascination. This mortal has somehow achieved a state of rest that approaches the eternal, and the circumstances surrounding this phenomenon deserve your closest attention. You rise from your loom, leaving the night's remaining dreams to weave themselves with the help of your assistant spirits. The pool of reflection shows you more details as you focus your divine perception on the sleeping figure. His name surfaces in your consciousness, Endymion, a shepherd whose beauty has attracted attention from realms far beyond the mortal world. His flock grazes peacefully around his motionless form, somehow understanding that their guardian has entered a sleep that transcends normal human experience. The moonlight illuminating the scene carries a familiar signature. Your cousin Selene, the goddess of the moon, has been busy tonight. You can sense her divine influence in the supernatural brilliance of the light, in the way shadows fall with perfect clarity, in the almost palpable peace that surrounds the sleeping shepherd. This explains the unusual nature of Endymion's slumber. Divine intervention has transformed what might have been an ordinary night's rest into something approaching your own eternal repose. Through your connection to all forms of sleep, you experience what Endymion experiences in his enchanted slumber. His dreams are unlike any you have witnessed in mortal minds. Vast and luminous, filled with landscapes that exist somewhere between earth and sky. He walks through fields of silver grass under skies painted with aurora light, accompanied by beings whose faces shift between human and celestial. These are not dreams crafted by your own hand, but visions born from divine love, gifts from Selene to the mortal who has captured her immortal heart. You watch as the shepherd's physical form undergoes subtle changes under the influence of this supernatural sleep. His breathing becomes so slow and regular that minutes pass between each inhalation and exhalation. His skin takes on a luminous quality, as if moonlight has seeped into his very flesh. Most remarkably, the normal processes of aging seem to have halted entirely. This sleep preserves him in a state of perfect youth and health, suspended between mortal life and divine eternity. The sheep around him have begun to exhibit strange behaviours as well. Instead of returning to their pen for the night, they arrange themselves in a protective circle around their sleeping master. They do not graze or wander, but stand vigil with an intelligence that seems beyond their normal animal nature. Even the pregnant ewe that had shown signs of approaching labour stands quietly, her delivery apparently postponed until her shepherd can return to consciousness to assist her. This scene fascinates you because it represents something you have never encountered before. Mortal sleep that has been transformed by divine love into something eternal. Your own realm deals in the temporary rest that restores and heals, the nightly retreat from consciousness that prepares mortals for another day of waking life. But what you observe on Mount Latmus is sleep as preservation, rest as a form of immortality, slumber as a gift that transcends the normal boundaries between mortal and divine existence. You decide to visit this phenomenon in person, something you rarely do. Your divine form begins to shift and flow, becoming less substantial, more like living shadow than solid flesh. In this ethereal state you can travel instantly through the layers of earth and stone that separate your realm from the mortal world above. The journey feels like rising through cool water, each layer of reality offering less resistance until you emerge into the moonlit landscape of Mount Latmus. Standing near the sleeping shepherd, you can better appreciate the complexity of Celine's work. This is not simple enchantment, but sophisticated divine artistry. She has woven her lunar essence into every aspect of Endymion's being, creating a form of sleep that will preserve him indefinitely while allowing him to experience dreams of unparalleled beauty and meaning. The love that motivated this gift permeates every detail of the magical slumber. The sheep show no fear at your presence, though as the god of sleep, you should be visible to them in ways that other deities might not be. They regard you with calm interest, as if recognizing a kindred spirit dedicated to the peaceful arts of rest and restoration. The old ram that serves as their leader approaches you with dignity, offering a gentle bleat that you interpret as both greeting and request for reassurance about their master's condition. You extend your divine senses to examine Endymion's sleep more thoroughly, marvelling at its unique characteristics. Unlike the temporary unconsciousness you grant to mortals each night, this slumber has been designed to last for centuries, perhaps millennia. Every biological process has been slowed to an almost imperceptible rate, while maintaining perfect health and vitality. The shepherd will wake from this sleep exactly as he appears now, young, strong and beautiful, no matter how many years pass in the mortal world. The dreams flowing through his sleeping mind tell a story of love that transcends the normal boundaries between mortal and immortal. In his visions, Endymion walks with Selene through gardens that exist only in the realm of pure possibility, where flowers bloom with captured starlight and trees bear fruit that tastes of hope itself. They speak together in a language that requires no words, sharing thoughts and emotions with the perfect understanding that comes when two beings recognize their eternal connection. These dream conversations reveal the negotiations that led to this supernatural sleep. Endymion, faced with a choice between normal mortal life and eternal slumber in the arms of divine love, chose the latter without hesitation. His decision was motivated not by weariness with earthly existence, but by recognition of something more beautiful and meaningful than anything the waking world could offer. In choosing eternal sleep, he chose eternal love, accepting the gift of dreams that would unite him forever with the goddess who had fallen in love with his mortal beauty. You begin to understand that this arrangement serves purposes beyond the simple satisfaction of divine desire. Selene's love for Endymion has created a bridge between mortal and immortal realms, a connection that will influence both worlds for generations to come. The shepherd's eternal sleep becomes a symbol of perfect love, a story that will inspire poets and lovers throughout human history. His dreams will occasionally leak into the mortal world, inspiring artists and dreamers with visions of beauty that transcends ordinary human experience. The flock continues its patient vigil as you observe their master's transformed state. You realize that they too have been touched by the divine magic surrounding Endymion's sleep. They will not age or die while maintaining their watch, but will remain as eternal guardians of their sleeping shepherd. This small miracle within the larger enchantment speaks to Celine's attention to detail and her understanding of the bonds that connect all living beings. As you prepare to return to your own realm, you feel a subtle presence approaching. Celine herself, making one of her nightly visits to her beloved. You withdraw into shadow, not from fear, but from respect for the privacy of this divine romance. Through your concealment, you observe the moon goddess as she materializes beside the sleeping form, her radiance making the already brilliant moonlight seem pale by comparison. She kneels beside Endymion with grace that makes earthly dancers seem clumsy, her silver robes pooling around her like liquid light. Her fingers trace the contours of his face with infinite tenderness, and you understand that this simple touch maintains the magical sleep that preserves him. Each caress reinforces the divine gift, ensuring that he will continue to rest peacefully until the end of time itself, sustained by love that knows no limits or conditions. The goddess begins to speak, her voice so soft that only divine ears could detect it, telling her sleeping lover about the night's journey across the sky, the mortals she has watched over, the beauty she has witnessed in the world below. These whispered conversations are part of the gift she offers him, the assurance that even in sleep, he remains connected to the larger world, aware through her words of the passage of time and the continuation of life beyond his mountain sanctuary. You witness this tender scene with growing appreciation for the complexity of divine love. What might seem like imprisonment to some mortals represents the ultimate freedom to Endymion, liberation from the constraints of mortal time, from the inevitable decay of aging, from the fear of death that haunts all earthly existence. In accepting eternal sleep, he has gained eternal love, eternal beauty, eternal peace. The implications of this arrangement extend far beyond the personal happiness of goddess and shepherd. Endymion's sleep creates a permanent connection between earth and sky, mortal and divine, temporal and eternal. His dreams will influence the collective unconscious of humanity for generations, introducing themes of perfect love and transcendent beauty that will resurface in countless stories, poems, and works of art. As Selene completes her nightly visit and begins to fade back into pure moonlight, you emerge from your concealment to examine once more the sleeping figure that has become the centre of such divine attention. Endymion's face in repose shows complete contentment, the expression of someone who has found exactly what he was seeking in life. His eternal sleep represents not escape from existence, but the deepest possible engagement with its most beautiful possibilities. The sheep gradually settle into their own rest, maintaining their protective circle, but allowing themselves the luxury of lying down in the soft grass. Their vigil continues even in sleep, their animal senses alert for any threat to their enchanted master. This loyalty touches you deeply, reminding you that love and devotion exist at every level of creation, from the divine romance of goddess and shepherd to the simple faithfulness of animals for their caretaker. You return to your own realm with much to contemplate, carrying with you new understanding of how sleep can serve purposes beyond simple restoration and healing. Endymion's eternal slumber represents sleep as preservation, as gift, as bridge between mortal and immortal realms. This knowledge will influence your own work, adding new dimensions to the dreams you craft and the rest you provide to mortals who seek more than temporary escape from the burdens of conscious existence. But as you settle back into the familiar rhythms of your divine duties, weaving dreams for ordinary mortals who will wake with the dawn, you find yourself wondering about other forms of miraculous sleep that might exist in the world. Places where entire communities might have found ways to escape the normal flow of time, and what secrets their prolonged slumber might reveal about the true nature of rest and forgetfulness. Chapter 3. The Lotus Eaters, life in the land of forgetful bliss. Back in your divine realm, the vision of Endymion's eternal slumber continues to resonate through your consciousness as you return to your loom. The threads beneath your fingers seem different now, charged with new possibilities inspired by witnessing divine love transformed into perpetual rest. But as you weave the remaining dreams for this night's sleepers, another disturbance ripples through the pool of reflection. Not the focused intensity of a single enchanted shepherd, but something far more complex and widespread. The pool's surface shows you glimpses of an island that exists somewhere beyond the normal boundaries of mortal geography. A place where the very concept of time seems to flow differently than in the rest of the world. Palm trees sway in breezes that carry the scent of flowers too sweet to be entirely natural, and the sand beneath them glows with a subtle phosphorescence that has nothing to do with reflected sunlight. This is the island of the Lotus Eaters, and every inhabitant you observe moves with the languid grace of beings who have forgotten that urgency ever existed. Your divine perception allows you to observe this strange community in detail, and what you see challenges everything you thought you knew about the relationship between sleep and waking life. These people are not asleep in any conventional sense. They walk, they speak, they tend to simple daily tasks, yet their consciousness exists in a state that resembles the deepest, most peaceful dreams. They have achieved something extraordinary: waking sleep, conscious rest, active forgetfulness that allows them to live without the burdens that normally weigh down mortal existence. The island itself appears to be the source of this transformation. Lotus flowers bloom everywhere in impossible profusion, not just the familiar water lilies of earthly ponds, but varieties that exist only in this blessed place. Some have petals like spun silver that chime softly when touched by the wind. Others glow with inner light that pulses in rhythm with the heartbeats of those who tend them. The most remarkable specimens bear fruit that hangs heavy on crystalline stems, each piece containing within its translucent flesh the power to wash away memory, worry, and the sharp edges of conscious thought. You decide that this phenomenon requires closer investigation, not merely for your own curiosity, but because understanding these different forms of supernatural rest might enhance your ability to serve mortals who seek deeper peace than ordinary sleep can provide. Once again, you transform your divine essence into something capable of travelling through the layers of reality, but this journey takes you not downward through earth and stone, but sideways through dimensions that exist parallel to the normal mortal world. The transition feels like swimming through warm honey, each movement requiring effort but rewarded with sensations of profound comfort and ease. As you emerge onto the shores of the Lotus Eater Island, the first thing that strikes you is the quality of the air itself, thick with perfume from countless flowers, but also somehow substantial, as if breathing has become a form of nourishment that satisfies hunger and thirst simultaneously. Every inhalation brings with it a gentle drowsiness that makes you understand immediately why visitors to this place might choose never to leave. The beach where you materialize stretches in both directions farther than divine sight can penetrate, its sand composed of tiny crystals that sing soft harmonic tones when disturbed by footsteps. Palm trees line the shore, their fronds moving in patterns that seem choreographed to create the most soothing visual rhythm possible. Hanging from many of these trees are hammocks woven from fibre so fine it appears almost transparent, each one occupied by a figure resting in positions of perfect comfort and contentment. The Lotus Eaters themselves are immediately recognisable, not by any specific physical characteristics, but by the distinctive quality of their movement and expression. They walk as if through water, each step deliberate and unhurried, their faces bearing expressions of such complete serenity that even you, as the god of sleep, feel a momentary pang of envy. These mortals have achieved something that your divine nature grants you automatically: absolute freedom from anxiety, regret, anticipation, or any of the other mental states that disturb perfect peace. You observe one of them more closely, a middle-aged woman who tends a grove of the silver-petalled lotus flowers. Her movements as she waters each plant are ceremonial in their precision, but without any sense of ritual obligation. She performs each action because it brings her pleasure, because the sound of water on leaves creates music that enhances her already perfect contentment. When she speaks to the flowers, for she does speak to them, in a voice like wind through summer grass, her words carry no urgency or purpose beyond the simple joy of communication. The woman notices your presence without alarm or curiosity, greeting you with a smile that contains no questions, no expectations, no desire for anything beyond the acknowledgement of shared existence in this moment of perfect present time. Her eyes, you realise, hold no memory of yesterday and no concern for tomorrow, only the infinite depth of now, experienced with complete attention and acceptance. This is what the lotus fruit has given her, not unconsciousness, but consciousness purified of everything that normally makes mortal awareness a burden rather than a gift. "Welcome, peaceful stranger," she says, her voice carrying the musical quality that seems to characterize all speech on this island. "Have you come to taste the fruit of forgetfulness, or do you carry some other purpose in your divine essence?" The casual way she identifies your immortal nature surprises you until you remember that beings who exist in perfect present time would naturally recognize the eternal qualities that define divine existence. You explain that you are Hypnos, god of sleep, drawn to study the unique form of rest that characterizes life on this island. She nods with understanding that requires no explanation, gesturing toward the grove where lotus fruits hang heavy on their crystal branches. "Our sleep never ends and never begins," she tells you. "We discovered that consciousness need not be a burden, that memory need not be a chain, that time need not be a master. The fruit shows us how to live in the eternal moment that exists between heartbeats." As she speaks, other inhabitants of the island begin to gather, drawn not by curiosity but by the same gentle magnetism that causes flowers to turn towards sunlight. They approach with the unhurried grace that characterizes all their movements, forming a loose circle that feels more like a natural phenomenon than a deliberate gathering. Each face shows variations on the same theme of perfect contentment, as if they have all discovered the secret to happiness and found it so simple they marvel that everyone does not possess it. An elderly man with skin darkened by countless days under the island's gentle sun offers you a piece of lotus fruit, explaining its properties with the patience of someone who has no other pressing engagements. "The first taste removes yesterday," he says, holding the translucent fruit so that light passes through it in rainbow patterns. "The second taste dissolves tomorrow. The third brings the gift of eternal now, where every moment contains all the joy that has ever existed or ever will exist. You accept the fruit with divine caution, knowing that your immortal nature will prevent it from affecting you as it does mortals, but curious to experience even a hint of the transformation it provides. The flesh is cool and sweet, with flavours that remind you simultaneously of honey, rose petals and morning dew. As promised, you feel no alteration in your divine consciousness, but you do gain understanding of how the fruit works its magic on mortal minds. The lotus contains within its essence a distilled form of the present moment, concentrated and purified until it becomes more real than memory or anticipation. For mortals whose consciousness normally flickers between past and future, like a candle in wind, tasting this pure present comes as a revelation so profound that they gladly abandon their former way of experiencing existence. They do not lose their memories so much as lose their attachment to them, allowing the past to exist without creating obligation, and the future to approach without generating anxiety. A young man who appears to be barely out of adolescence approaches with the same serene composure as his elders, carrying a shallow bowl filled with water from the island's central spring. "Would you like to see how we live each day?" he asks, offering the water with ceremony that feels ancient though it contains no religious element. Our daily routine might interest the god who brings dreams to those who still struggle with the burden of ordinary time, Music emerges from these gatherings as naturally as stories, with various instruments appearing in hands that seemed empty moments before. The melodies they create follow no established patterns or scales, instead evolving organically from the emotions and inspirations of the moment. Some pieces last for hours, building slowly and changing direction as different players contribute their voices. Others consist of just a few notes that capture perfectly the essence of a particular feeling or observation. None of the music is preserved or repeated. Each performance exists only in its moment of creation, then dissolves back into the silence from which it emerged. As night approaches on the island, the daily routine does not shift toward preparation for sleep as it would in the ordinary world. Instead, the inhabitants simply continue whatever activities bring them pleasure, allowing the changing light to provide natural transitions between different forms of experience. Some choose to rest as darkness falls, finding comfortable places to lie down and enter the deeper forms of consciousness that night facilitates. Others remain active, tending bonfires that burn with flames of unusual colours, or walking along beaches where bioluminescent waves create patterns of living light. The boundaries between sleep and waking remain fluid throughout the night cycle. Those who rest do so with the same unhurried grace that characterises all their activities, entering sleep not as an escape from waking life, but as another form of experience to be savoured and appreciated. Their dreams, you discover, have a unique quality. Instead of the symbolic complexity that characterises ordinary mortal dreams, Lotus Eater dreams consist of pure sensation and emotion, experiences of beauty, comfort, and joy distilled to their absolute essence. You spend considerable time observing these dream states, fascinated by how the lotus fruit has transformed not only waking consciousness, but sleeping consciousness as well. The usual mental processing that occurs during normal sleep, the sorting of memories, the working through of emotional conflicts, the preparation for future challenges, appears unnecessary for beings who live entirely in present moments. Instead, their dreams serve as extensions of their waking experience, providing additional dimensions of pleasure and beauty rather than serving the restorative and integrative functions that characterize ordinary sleep. The island's unique temporal relationship becomes more apparent as you extend your observation through several complete cycles of day and night. While time continues to pass in the measurable sense, the sun rises and sets, the tides ebb and flow, the lotus flowers bloom and fade in their natural rhythm. The inhabitants experience duration differently than other mortals. Minutes can feel like hours when they become completely absorbed in simple pleasures, while hours can pass unnoticed when they rest in states of perfect contentment. This altered relationship with time has profound implications for how they experience existence itself. Without the anxiety that comes from racing against deadlines, without the regret that comes from dwelling on past mistakes, without the worry that comes from anticipating future problems, they inhabit each moment with a fullness and intensity that makes ordinary mortal experience seem pale and distracted by comparison. They have discovered how to live in the eternal present that mystics and philosophers talk about but rarely achieve. You begin to understand that the Lotus Eaters have solved one of the fundamental problems of mortal existence, the burden of consciousness, the weight of memory, the tyranny of time. They have found a way to experience awareness without suffering, knowledge without anxiety, existence without the fear of loss that normally shadows every mortal pleasure. In achieving this transformation, they have gained something precious, but also given up something equally valuable, the dynamic engagement with challenge and change that drives growth and achievement in ordinary mortal life. As your extended observation period draws to a close, you find yourself contemplating the relationship between their form of conscious rest and your own divine nature. Your realm provides temporary escape from the burdens of mortal awareness, offering nightly restoration that allows conscious beings to continue functioning despite the difficulties of existence. The Lotus Eaters have chosen a different solution, permanent transformation of consciousness itself, trading the struggles and achievements of ordinary awareness for the perfect peace of eternal present moment experience. Neither approach is superior to the other, you realize. They serve different needs and appeal to different types of souls. Some mortals require the temporary relief that normal sleep provides, using dreams and rest as resources for continued engagement with the challenges of conscious existence. Others, like the inhabitants of this blessed island, find their deepest fulfillment in stepping outside the normal flow of time and memory entirely, discovering in lotus-induced forgetfulness a form of waking sleep that satisfies their deepest longings for peace. But as you prepare to return to your own realm, carrying with you new appreciation for the varieties of rest and restoration possible in mortal experience, you find yourself wondering about communities where the relationship between sleep and waking takes yet another form. Places where entire populations might have discovered ways to extend natural sleep far beyond its normal duration, and what dreams might visit those who slumber not just for a night, but for decades or centuries. Chapter 4. Morpheus. Crafting Dreams in the House of Sleep. Your return journey from the Lotus Eater Island feels different this time, as if the exposure to their transformed consciousness has subtly altered your own divine perception. The transition through dimensional layers carries with it echoes of their eternal present moment awareness, reminding you that even gods can learn new ways of experiencing existence. As you materialize back in your familiar realm, the river Letha's gentle murmuring seems to carry new harmonics, and the obsidian walls of your cave pulse with rhythms that feel more complex than before. But your contemplation of these changes is interrupted by a presence you have not felt in many centuries, your son Morpheus, god of dreams, approaching through the deeper passages of your domain. His footsteps create no sound on the stone floors, but you sense his arrival through the subtle shifts in the dream energy that permeates your realm. Where your domain focuses on the broad gift of sleep itself, Morpheus specializes in the intricate craft of dream construction, and his approaching presence indicates that tonight's work will require collaboration between your complementary arts. Morpheus emerges from the shadows with the fluid grace that characterizes his nature, his form seeming to shift and flow like living dream stuff even when he maintains a consistent appearance. Tonight he appears as a tall figure draped in robes that seem woven from captured starlight, his face bearing the ageless beauty common to dream deities, but marked by the particular intensity that comes from one who shapes the visions that visit sleeping minds. His eyes hold depths that reflect not the physical world, but the infinite landscapes of possibility that exist within human imagination. Father, he greets you with the respect due to the source of his own divine nature, but also with the confidence of one who has mastered his own specialized domain. I come tonight with unusual challenges that require your broader wisdom about the nature of rest itself. The dreams I must craft for certain mortals demand understanding, not just of how consciousness works, but of how it can be transformed through contact with deeper forms of sleep. You gesture toward the comfortable area near your loom where you often receive visitors, though few others besides your immediate family ever venture into your realm. Morpheus settles with characteristic grace onto cushions that adjust themselves automatically to provide perfect comfort, while you prepare cups of the nectar that never empties, its taste tonight carrying hints of the lotus fruit you sampled on the distant island. Tell me about these challenging dreams, you invite, settling beside your son and noting how his presence causes the very air around you to shimmer with potential images and narratives. Morpheus has inherited from you the fundamental power over sleep, but his specific gift lies in populating that sleep with meaningful visions that serve purposes beyond simple rest. Where you provide the canvas of unconsciousness, he paints the pictures that sleepers carry back into waking life. Morpheus extends his hand, and above his palm materializes a sphere of translucent dream energy that shows swirling images of the mortals whose sleep has drawn his attention. 3 individuals, he explains, his voice taking on the multi-layered quality that allows him to speak simultaneously in the languages of logic, emotion, and pure symbol. Each requires dreams that will prepare them for encounters with supernatural forms of sleep, the kind of transformative rest you have been observing tonight. The first image in the sphere shows a young sailor whose ship will soon encounter the Lotus Eater Island during a storm that drives them far off their intended course. The sailor, whose name surfaces in your consciousness as Lycaon, currently sleeps in his hammock aboard the vessel, unaware that his life is about to change dramatically. His dreams tonight must prepare him for the choice he will face, whether to taste the lotus fruit and join the community of eternal present moment awareness, or resist its temptation and return to the ordinary world with its burdens and struggles. His dreams require delicate balance, Morpheus explains, manipulating the sphere so that you can observe the sailor's sleeping form more closely. I must show him the beauty of perfect peace without making ordinary life seem unbearably harsh by comparison. He must understand both the gift and the sacrifice involved in choosing lotus-induced forgetfulness, so that whatever decision he makes will be truly free and informed. The second image shows a young woman, a scholar in one of the great libraries of the ancient world, whose research into mythological accounts of supernatural sleep has attracted divine attention. She will soon receive a visitation from Selene, who seeks mortals capable of understanding and perhaps recording the story of her love for Endymion. The scholar's dreams must prepare her consciousness for direct contact with divine beings, expanding her capacity for comprehending realities that exceed normal human experience. Her name is Pythia, Morpheus continues, and she possesses the rare combination of scholarly rigour and intuitive openness that makes mortals suitable for receiving divine revelations. But even the most receptive human mind requires preparation before it can safely contain knowledge of immortal love and supernatural sleep. Her dreams must serve as bridges between mortal understanding and divine reality. The third image reveals an elderly king whose realm has fallen under a curse of supernatural slumber, not the gentle, restorative sleep you normally provide, but a malevolent enchantment that traps his subjects in nightmares while their bodies remain unconscious for days at a time. The king himself has so far resisted the curse through sheer force of will, but he grows weaker each night, and his dreams must provide him with the wisdom and strength necessary to break the enchantment before it claims his entire kingdom. King Thanatos, ironically named for your brother Death, faces a perversion of sleep that threatens everything he holds dear, Morpheus explains, his expression growing more serious. The curse transforms rest from blessing into torment, and breaking it requires understanding of sleep's true nature that goes far deeper than most mortals ever achieve. His dreams must become teaching visions that reveal the fundamental principles governing all forms of supernatural slumber. You study each of these cases with growing interest, recognizing that they represent different aspects of the challenges mortals face when they encounter forms of sleep that transcend ordinary human experience. The sailor must choose between transformation and retention of his current identity. The scholar must expand her consciousness to accommodate divine knowledge. The king must understand sleep deeply enough to distinguish between its beneficial and harmful manifestations. These dreams cannot be crafted using my normal methods, you observe, understanding now why Morpheus has sought your collaboration. They require not just symbolic narratives, but actual experiences of the different forms of supernatural sleep themselves. The dreamers must somehow encounter Endymion's eternal slumber, the Lotus Eater's conscious rest, and the malevolent curse that threatens the kingdom, but in ways that educate rather than overwhelm or transform them prematurely. Morpheus nods, his form shifting slightly as excitement builds around the creative challenge ahead. Exactly. I need to create dreams within dreams, nested levels of experience that allow these mortals to safely explore realities that would normally be too intense for human consciousness to process. Each dream must be a carefully controlled journey through different types of supernatural sleep, designed to provide understanding without causing permanent alteration. You rise from your cushions and approach the great loom where so much of your own work takes place, but tonight its purpose will be different. Instead of weaving individual dreams for separate sleepers, you and Morpheus will collaborate to create complex, multi-layered visions that serve as educational experiences. The threads available for this work include not only the usual materials of sleep and rest, but also samples of the actual supernatural slumber you've been observing. From a special cabinet carved into the cave wall, you retrieve containers holding essence distilled from various forms of extraordinary sleep. One vial contains moonbeams from Mount Latmus, carrying within their silver light the quality of Endymion's eternal rest. Another holds crystallized air from the Lotus Eater Island, preserving the consciousness-altering properties of their transformed awareness. A third contains shadow essence from the Cursed Kingdom, representing the dark perversion of sleep that the king must learn to combat. We will begin with the sailor's dream, you decide, selecting threads that shimmer with the colours of ocean and sky. His vision must take him on a journey through different islands, each representing a different relationship between sleep and consciousness. He will experience these places as a traveller exploring possibilities, not yet committed to any particular choice. Working together, you and Morpheus begin to weave a dream of extraordinary complexity. The foundational threads create the experience of sailing through waters that exist somewhere between the physical ocean and the sea of dreams itself. The sailor finds himself aboard a vessel that responds to his thoughts rather than to wind or current, carrying him toward islands that appear and disappear according to the rhythm of his own breathing. The first island he visits in this dream journey resembles his own familiar world, but with all its harsh edges softened by the gentle influence of normal restorative sleep. Here he encounters people who work and rest in natural cycles, using sleep as a tool for healing and renewal, without losing their engagement with the challenges and rewards of conscious existence. This island represents the choice to continue with ordinary mortal life, enhanced by proper appreciation for the gift of nightly rest. The second island brings him to the shores of the Lotus Eater community, but experienced through the safety of dream rather than physical presence. Here he walks among beings who have chosen eternal present moment awareness, observing their perfect contentment while remaining aware that he is only visiting their reality, rather than joining it permanently. He tastes dream lotus fruit that gives him temporary experience of their transformed consciousness without binding him to their choice. The third island shows him Mount Latmus, where he observes Endymion's supernatural slumber, from the perspective of a fellow shepherd who understands both the beauty and the sacrifice involved in choosing eternal sleep for the sake of divine love. In this dream experience, the sailor feels the pull of such transcendent rest, while also recognizing that it represents a path available only to those called to it by forces beyond ordinary human experience. As you and Morpheus work together to weave these complex visions, your son's specialized skills become apparent in the subtle ways he shapes each island to reflect the sailor's own psychological needs and spiritual development. The dream is not simply a tour of different options, but a carefully crafted exploration of the sailor's own deepest desires and fears about rest, consciousness, and the choices that define mortal existence. The scholar's dream requires even greater sophistication, as she must be prepared for direct divine contact without losing her scholarly objectivity or her human perspective. Morpheus creates for her a vision in which she finds herself in a vast library that exists simultaneously in the mortal world and in divine realms, its shelves containing books that write themselves as she reads them, recording the stories of supernatural sleep as they unfold in real time. In this dream library, she encounters the spirits of other scholars who have received divine revelations about the nature of sleep and dreams. They guide her through texts that describe Celine's love for Endymion not as mere mythology, but as living reality, helping her understand how divine love can transform mortal sleep into something eternal and beautiful. The experience expands her consciousness gradually, like eyes slowly adjusting to brighter light, preparing her to receive and record divine knowledge without being overwhelmed by its intensity. The king's dream presents the greatest challenge, requiring not just exposure to different forms of supernatural sleep, but actual instruction in the principles that govern their operation. Morpheus crafts for him a vision in which he becomes a student in an ancient academy where the curriculum consists entirely of sleep-related mysteries, taught by figures who represent different aspects of rest and dreams. You yourself appear in this dream as the primary instructor, explaining to the king how legitimate supernatural sleep always serves purposes of healing, love, or transcendence, while corrupted sleep seeks only to drain energy and impose suffering. Through carefully designed dream exercises, the king learns to distinguish between beneficial and harmful forms of altered consciousness, developing the knowledge he will need to identify and counter the curse affecting his kingdom. Each of these dreams requires hours of collaborative weaving, with you providing the foundational energies of sleep, while Morpheus adds the specific imagery, narrative structure, and symbolic content that will make the experiences meaningful to their recipients. The work demands constant attention to detail, as any element that feels false or forced could shatter the dream's effectiveness or traumatize the dreamer. As the night progresses, you become aware of how this collaborative process has deepened your own understanding of sleep's possibilities. Working with Morpheus reminds you that your gift of rest becomes most powerful when combined with his talent for meaningful dreams, creating experiences that serve not just restoration, but education, inspiration, and spiritual growth. The 3 complex dreams reach completion just as dawn approaches in the mortal world where their recipients sleep. You and Morpheus release them simultaneously, watching through your divine perception as the carefully crafted visions settle into the minds of sailor, scholar, and king. Each dream begins to unfold according to its recipient's individual needs and capacity for understanding, adapting itself to provide exactly the right intensity and pacing for maximum benefit. This collaboration reminds me why dream work requires both our gifts, Morpheus observes, as you both rest from your intensive labour. Sleep without meaningful dreams provides only temporary respite, while dreams without proper sleep lack the depth necessary for true transformation. Together, our arts create experiences that serve the deepest needs of mortal consciousness. You nod in agreement, feeling satisfaction not just in the night's work, but in the renewed connection with your son's specialized domain. The dreams you've woven together will influence their recipients for years to come, providing them with resources for understanding and navigating encounters with supernatural forms of sleep that would otherwise overwhelm or confuse them. But as you settle back into your own divine rest, preparing for the next cycle of sleep-related duties, you sense that the network of extraordinary slumber you've been observing continues to expand and evolve. Somewhere in the mortal world, communities might exist where supernatural sleep takes forms even more complex than those you have already witnessed, and the dreams required to prepare mortals for such encounters will demand even greater collaboration between the various powers that govern rest, dreams, and the mysterious borderlands between consciousness and the eternal peace that lies beyond all waking concerns. Chapter 5. Rip Van Winkle, a colonial village before the long sleep. The completion of the complex dream weaving with Morpheus leaves your realm suffused with new energies, threads of possibility that continue to shimmer long after your son has departed to oversee the dream's implementation. But as you return to your more routine duties, the pool of reflection begins to show you images that seem oddly familiar, yet distinctly different from the mythological forms of supernatural sleep you have been observing. These visions carry the quality of future events, not the immediate future, but centuries ahead, in lands that do not yet exist in the consciousness of current mortals. The pool's surface reveals a small village nestled in mountains that bear resemblance to places you know, yet transformed by time and the presence of peoples who have crossed vast oceans to establish new homes far from their ancestral lands. The architecture speaks of European influences adapted to different climates and materials, while the rhythms of daily life blend old world traditions with the improvisations necessary for survival in unfamiliar territory. This is a community poised on the edge of dramatic historical changes, though its inhabitants go about their daily routines unaware of the transformations approaching. Among the villagers, one figure draws your particular attention, a man whose relationship with sleep and waking will soon become the stuff of legend. His name emerges in your divine consciousness as Rip van Winkle, a Dutch colonist whose easygoing nature and preference for leisure over industrious labour have made him something of an oddity in a community that values hard work and practical achievement. Today, as you observe him through the pool's prophetic surface, represents his final day of ordinary mortal experience before supernatural sleep claims him for decades. The vision intrigues you because it suggests that your influence extends far beyond the classical world of gods and heroes into the daily lives of common people in times and places yet to come. Rip's approaching encounter with extraordinary slumber will not result from divine love like Endymion's, nor from magical fruit like the Lotus Eater's transformation, nor from careful preparation like the dreams you and Morpheus have crafted. Instead, it will emerge from the most mundane circumstances, a man seeking to avoid his wife's complaints about his laziness, who wanders into the mountains and encounters forces that will remove him from the normal flow of time entirely. You decide to observe this final day more closely, not to intervene but to understand how supernatural sleep manifests in the lives of ordinary mortals who have no particular spiritual preparation or divine calling. The experience may provide insights useful for your ongoing work with the various forms of transformative rest that seem to be proliferating throughout mortal experience. Focusing your divine perception on the small colonial village, you begin to experience the day from Rip's own perspective, feeling the weight of domestic obligations and social expectations that make prolonged sleep seem like an attractive escape from the complexities of conscious existence. The morning begins, as most of Rip's mornings do, with the sound of his wife Dame Van Winkle's voice, calling him to tasks he has been postponing for weeks. You sense Rip's gradual awakening in the small bedroom of their modest house, built from local stone and timber according to patterns brought from the old country, but adapted to New World conditions. The bed itself is comfortable enough, a wooden frame sporting a mattress stuffed with feathers and straw, covered with quilts sewn by Dame Van Winkle's capable hands. But the comfort of the bed pales compared to the discomfort of facing another day of criticism about his failure to complete various household repairs and improvements. Through Rip's consciousness, you experience the peculiar burden of being a man who values rest and contemplation in a community that measures worth primarily through industrious activity. His neighbours wake each morning eager to tackle the day's work, clearing new fields, building additions to their homes, crafting tools and furniture, engaging in the countless tasks required to establish civilization in wilderness settings. Rip wakes each morning hoping to find some way to avoid such labours without causing too much domestic discord. The sounds filtering through the window tell the story of a community already well into its morning routines. Axes ring against wood as neighbours clear stumps from new planting areas. Hammers strike anvils in the village smithy. Women's voices call children to breakfast and morning chores. Cattle low in small pastures carved from forest clearings. The entire village hums with productive activity, making Rip's preference for leisurely contemplation seem like a character flaw rather than a different approach to experiencing existence. Dame Van Winkle's voice grows more insistent, eventually accompanied by footsteps on the wooden stairs leading to their bedroom. You feel Rip's internal conflict, the genuine desire to please his wife balanced against an equally genuine inability to find enthusiasm for the tasks she considers essential. He loves her, you realise, but their approaches to daily life are so fundamentally different that peaceful coexistence requires constant negotiation and compromise. "Rip Van Winkle," she calls, her voice carrying the particular note of exasperation that comes from repeating the same request day after day without seeing satisfactory results. The fence around our kitchen garden still has 3 broken rails. The roof leak over our bedroom continues to drip every time it rains, and you promised weeks ago to help our neighbour Johannes with his barn raising. How much longer will you lie abed while important work goes undone? You experience Rip's response to this familiar litany, not anger or resentment, but a kind of weary resignation mixed with genuine puzzlement about why these tasks seem so urgent to her when they appear perfectly capable of waiting indefinitely to him. The broken fence rails still keep most animals out of the garden. The roof leak affects only a small area and can be managed with a strategically placed bucket. Johannes has several other neighbours willing to help with his barn, making Rip's participation useful but not essential. Rising from bed with the slow deliberation of someone who sees no compelling reason for haste, Rip dresses in his usual simple clothing. Breeches and shirt made from homespun cloth, a vest that has seen better days, and the comfortable old shoes that have carried him through countless walks in the surrounding mountains. His appearance in the mirror shows a man approaching middle age but still retaining the lean build of someone who spends considerable time walking outdoors, even if he spends relatively little time engaged in manual labour. Downstairs, Dame Van Winkle has prepared breakfast. Porridge made from corn grown in their own garden, milk from their cow, bread baked from wheat, obtained through trade with other colonists. The food is simple but nourishing, and under normal circumstances Rip would enjoy both the meal and the opportunity to sit quietly while planning his day. But Dame Van Winkle's continued commentary on his shortcomings makes peaceful eating impossible. "Look at our neighbour Heinrich," she says, gesturing toward the window that shows their nearest neighbour's property. "Already he has completed the morning milking, fed his chickens, chopped wood for today's cooking, and begun ploughing his south field for winter wheat. Meanwhile, you sit here eating as if you had no responsibilities in the world." Through Rip's consciousness, you feel his internal response to such comparisons, not defensiveness exactly, but a kind of sad bewilderment about why his wife cannot appreciate the different gifts he brings to their life together. While Heinrich excels at practical tasks, Rip possesses other talents that seem to go unnoticed. He can read weather patterns in cloud formations and wind directions, predicting storms days before they arrive. He knows every plant in the surrounding mountains, including which ones provide food or medicine and which should be avoided. His conversations with other colonists often provide valuable information about game movements, seasonal changes, and the subtle signs that indicate good times for hunting or fishing. But these skills, while occasionally useful, do not translate into the consistent daily productivity that colonial life demands. Dame Van Winkle needs fence rails replaced, not lectures about the migration patterns of local deer. She needs roof repairs completed, not detailed observations about the relationship between atmospheric pressure and rainfall patterns. Her frustration with Rip stems not from lack of love, but from practical concerns about their family's welfare and social standing in the community. After breakfast, Rip makes a genuine effort to address his wife's concerns, gathering tools and materials necessary for repairing the garden fence. The work itself is not particularly difficult, replacing broken rails with new ones cut from available timber, but it requires the kind of sustained attention to detail that Rip finds mentally exhausting. His mind naturally wanders to more interesting subjects. The way morning light filters through forest leaves, the calls of birds announcing territorial boundaries, the subtle changes in season indicated by alterations in plant growth patterns. By mid-morning, he has successfully replaced one of the 3 broken fence rails, a pace of progress that would require most of the day to complete the entire job. Dame Van Winkle's periodic inspections of his work are accompanied by increasingly pointed comments about the relationship between effort and results, observations that make Rip feel more like a disappointing employee than a beloved husband. The arrival of his friend Nicholas Vedder provides welcome relief from both the tedious fence work and his wife's supervision. Nicholas, who shares Rip's preference for conversation over labour, brings news from the village inn where local men gather to discuss politics, trade and community affairs. The current topic of greatest interest involves rumours about tensions between the colonists and their distant government, disagreements that seem likely to escalate into more serious conflicts. The talk grows more heated each week, Nicholas reports, settling comfortably on a tree stump while Rip continues his desultory work on the fence. Some of our neighbours speak openly about resistance to new tax policies, while others counsel patience and negotiation. I fear we live in times that will demand men choose sides in conflicts they never sought. This news troubles Rip more than his wife's domestic complaints, because political conflicts threaten the peaceful existence he values above all other considerations. He has no strong opinions about taxation policies or governmental structures. Such abstract concerns seem far removed from the immediate realities of daily life in their small mountain community. The idea that external forces might disrupt the simple rhythms of village existence, possibly requiring him to take positions on issues he barely understands, fills him with anxiety that makes even fence repair seem preferable to contemplating the future. As the morning progresses toward midday, Dame Van Winkle's patience with her husband's slow progress and extended conversations reaches its limit. She appears at the garden gate with a particular expression that indicates a comprehensive review of his shortcomings is about to commence, covering not only today's inadequate fence work but also the accumulated failures of recent weeks and months. "Rip Van Winkle," she begins, her voice carrying the formal tone that always precedes her most serious criticisms. "I have been patient beyond reason with your preference for idleness over industry, but my patience has limits. While you spend the morning accomplishing work that any dedicated man would complete in an hour, our neighbours advance steadily in their efforts to improve their properties and provide security for their families. The lecture that follows covers familiar territory: Rip's failure to demonstrate proper ambition, his neglect of various improvement projects, his tendency to prioritise personal comfort over family responsibilities. But today, her words carry additional weight because she connects his individual shortcomings to larger community concerns about the approaching political conflict. In times like these, she continues, our community needs men who can be relied upon to meet their obligations and contribute meaningfully to our collective welfare. How can our neighbours count on you to help defend our village if you cannot even be counted upon to repair our garden fence or assist with barn raisings? This connection between his personal failings and potential community dangers strikes Rip as fundamentally unfair, because his reluctance to engage in manual labour has nothing to do with his willingness to help neighbours in genuine emergencies. But he recognises that attempting to explain this distinction will only lead to further arguments, so he responds with the non-committal murmurs that experience has taught him represent the safest approach to his wife's lectures. Eventually, Dame Van Winkle exhausts her supply of criticisms and returns to her own household tasks, leaving Rip to contemplate his situation while pretending to work on the fence. The prospect of spending the entire day listening to variations on the same complaints, followed by an evening of pointed silence interrupted by occasional reminders of his inadequacies, makes the idea of escape increasingly attractive. Nicholas Vedder, who has witnessed similar domestic scenes many times, offers the suggestion that will change Rip's life forever. Perhaps a day in the mountains would restore your spirits, he says quietly. The autumn hunting season provides excellent excuse for extended absence from domestic concerns, and the physical distance might give Dame Van Winkle opportunity to remember your positive qualities, rather than focusing exclusively on areas where improvement might be desired. The suggestion appeals to Rip immediately, not because he has any genuine interest in hunting, but because the mountains offer solitude, natural beauty, and freedom from the constant pressure to accomplish specific tasks within designated time periods. A day spent walking forest paths, observing seasonal changes, and enjoying the peace that comes with distance from human conflicts seems like exactly what he needs to restore his emotional equilibrium. After informing Dame Van Winkle of his hunting plans, information she receives with skeptical comments about his likelihood of returning with actual game rather than empty-handed excuses. Rip gathers his fowling piece, powder horn, and the small pack he uses for extended walks. His dog Wolf, a faithful companion who shares his master's preference for leisurely exploration over purposeful activity, greets the prospect of a mountain adventure with obvious enthusiasm. The walk from the village into the surrounding mountains begins as a familiar pleasure, following paths Rip has travelled countless times in his search for peaceful solitude. The forest displays the full glory of autumn colouring, maples brilliant red and gold, oaks showing bronze and brown variations, evergreens providing dark green contrast to the deciduous display. The air carries the crisp clarity that comes with changing seasons, and the sounds of civilization fade gradually as distance increases. But as Rip climbs higher into areas he has never explored before, following Wolf's lead rather than any planned route, the familiar landscape begins to take on qualities that seem subtly different from his previous mountain experiences. The paths wind through terrain that appears both ancient and somehow timeless, as if the trees and rocks have existed unchanged for centuries and will continue unchanged for centuries more. As afternoon shadows grow longer and the sun begins its descent toward the western ridges, Rip finds himself in a hidden valley he has never seen before, despite years of mountain wandering. The valley's perfection seems almost designed. A natural amphitheatre surrounded by towering cliffs, with a small meadow at its centre and a stream providing music that harmonises perfectly with the whisper of wind through leaves above. Here, in this secret place that exists somewhere between the ordinary world and the realm of dreams, Rip Van Winkle will encounter the mysterious figures whose supernatural bowling game will grant him the longest sleep in American folklore. But that encounter still lies hours ahead, and for now he simply enjoys the peace of having found a place where time seems to move at its own pace, where the pressures of domestic life and community obligations cannot reach, where a man might rest for what feels like a few hours and discover upon awakening that the entire world has changed around him while he slept. Chapter 6. The Seven Sleepers. Daily Life in Ancient Ephesus. The vision of Rip Van Winkle's approaching supernatural slumber fades from the pool of reflection, as your divine awareness is drawn to yet another manifestation of extraordinary rest, this one emerging from the ancient city of Ephesus during the time of the Roman Emperor Decius. Unlike the mythological figures you have observed, or the future colonial villager whose story has not yet unfolded, this new phenomenon involves actual historical persons whose experience with supernatural sleep will become a cornerstone of Christian legend for millennia to come. Through your omniscient perception, you observe 7 young men whose faith in the new Christian religion has put them at odds with imperial decrees demanding worship of Roman gods. Their names flow into your consciousness: Maximilian, Malchus, Marcion, Dennis, John, Serapion, and Constantine, each carrying the distinctive spiritual energy of those who have committed themselves completely to beliefs that transcend ordinary mortal concerns. Today will be their final day of normal human experience before they enter a slumber that will last not for hours or seasons, but for nearly 2 centuries. The city of Ephesus bustles around them with the complex energy of a major Roman commercial centre, its streets filled with merchants, artisans, slaves, and citizens from across the known world. The great temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, still dominates the city's skyline, though its influence has begun to wane as new religions compete for the loyalty of the population. The air carries scents of spices from distant lands, the sounds of construction as the city continues to expand and modernise, and the constant background hum of commercial activity that characterises successful imperial cities. You focus your attention on these 7 young men as they navigate this final day of ordinary consciousness. each one aware that their refusal to participate in the required sacrifices to Roman gods has marked them as criminals subject to arrest, torture, and execution. Yet their movements through the city streets show no fear or desperation, only the calm determination of those who have already chosen spiritual integrity over physical safety and are prepared to accept whatever consequences their choice might bring. The eldest of the group, Maximilian, awakens in the modest dwelling he shares with his younger brother Malchus, in the Christian quarter of the city. Their room is simple but comfortable, furnished with sleeping couches, a small table for meals, and a few belongings that reflect their middle-class merchant background. The walls bear no obvious Christian symbols. Such displays would be dangerously provocative given the current imperial policy. But the atmosphere of the space carries the particular peace that comes to living places where prayer and meditation are regular practices. Through Maximilian's consciousness, you experience the strange mixture of tranquility and urgency that characterizes this day. He knows with certainty that imperial soldiers will come for him and his companions soon, probably before sunset. Yet this knowledge brings him no anxiety about the approaching confrontation. Instead, his awareness focuses on the privilege of experiencing one more day of normal human existence, savouring simple pleasures that he may never encounter again. The taste of bread and olive oil, the warmth of sunlight on his skin, the voices of friends engaged in meaningful conversation. Malchus stirs in his own sleeping couch as morning light filters through the small window that faces the courtyard shared by several Christian families. The brothers' morning routine begins with silent prayer, a practice so deeply embedded in their daily rhythm that it requires no conscious decision. They kneel on simple prayer rugs, facing east toward the rising sun, and offer their day to the God they serve regardless of whatever earthly powers might demand their allegiance. The prayers themselves contain no requests for divine intervention to save them from the approaching persecution, no appeals for miraculous escape from the consequences of their faith. Instead, their words focus on gratitude for the day ahead, whatever it might bring, and on the strength to remain faithful to their beliefs regardless of the pressures they will face. This acceptance of divine will, combined with complete commitment to their spiritual principles, creates the precise psychological and spiritual conditions necessary for the supernatural sleep that awaits them. After their morning prayers, the brothers prepare a simple breakfast from provisions stored in ceramic containers, bread baked by Christian neighbours, olives preserved in brine, goat cheese aged in the cellars beneath the Christian quarter, and water drawn from the communal well that serves their community. They eat slowly and deliberately, aware that this may be their final meal in familiar surroundings, but their conversation focuses on practical matters rather than dramatic fears about their uncertain future. The other brothers will gather at Marcion's workshop this morning to complete the copying work, Maximilian observes, referring to their current project of transcribing portions of Christian scriptures for distribution to other communities. If we finish the Gospel of John today, we will have completed our commitment to the church in Smyrna. This work represents more than mere copying. In an age when all books must be laboriously reproduced by hand, the Christian communities depend on dedicated scribes to preserve and spread their sacred texts. The 7 young men have spent months working together to produce accurate copies of Gospels, letters, and other Christian writings, their careful penmanship ensuring that future generations will have access to the spiritual resources that sustain their faith. Malchus nods while spreading olive oil on a piece of bread, his movements showing the same deliberate peace that characterises his brother's behaviour. Denny mentioned yesterday that he has nearly completed the illuminated initial for the first chapter. His artistic skills add beauty to our work that will make the manuscripts treasures for any community fortunate enough to receive them. Their conversation continues in this practical vein as they finish breakfast and prepare for the day ahead. Neither brother speaks directly about the imperial edict that has made their faith illegal, nor about the soldiers who have been systematically arresting Christians throughout the city. But their awareness of these dangers permeates every decision they make, from their choice of routes through the city streets to their selection of meeting places for their work. The Christian quarter where they live occupies a section of Ephesus that has grown up around several house churches, private homes converted to serve as gathering places for worship and community activities. The architecture differs little from other residential areas of the city, but the atmosphere carries distinctive qualities: quieter streets, more cooperation between neighbours, and the subtle signs that indicate a community held together by shared beliefs rather than mere geographic proximity. As the brothers leave their dwelling to join their 5 companions, they encounter other members of their Christian community engaged in their own morning routines. Children play games in courtyards while their parents complete household tasks. Elderly believers tend small gardens that provide vegetables for community meals, and younger adults prepare for various forms of work that support both their families and their religious community. The greeting they exchange with these neighbours contain no obvious references to the dangerous situation facing all Christians in the city, but undertones of mutual support and unspoken prayers for protection create bonds of solidarity that transcend ordinary social relationships. Each person they encounter understands that this day might bring arrest, imprisonment, torture, or death to any member of their community, yet their interactions focus on normal daily concerns rather than dramatic fears about persecution. Marcian's workshop occupies the ground floor of his family's home, a space that has been adapted to serve as both leatherworking establishment and scriptorium. The tools of his trade as a leather craftsman, knives, awls, needles, and various implements for shaping and finishing hides, share space with the materials needed for manuscript production. Reed pens, various inks, carefully prepared vellum, and the wooden boards used to keep pages flat while the ink dries. The other 4 members of their group have already arrived and begun their work when Maximilian and Malchus enter the workshop. Dennis, whose artistic talents make him responsible for decorative elements, bends over a partially completed page where an elaborate initial letter takes shape through careful application of coloured inks. John and Serapion work together on the tedious but essential task of preparing fresh vellum, scraping animal skins to the proper thickness and smoothness for receiving text. Constantine, who possesses the finest handwriting among them, continues copying biblical text with the slow precision necessary to avoid errors that would require starting entire pages over again. The workshop atmosphere combines focused concentration with gentle camaraderie, as the young men work together on their shared project while maintaining the quiet conversations that help pass long hours of detailed manual labour. Their topics range from technical questions about manuscript production to theological discussions about the meaning of passages they are copying, but underneath all their talk runs the awareness that this work takes on special significance given the uncertainty of their future. The passage from John about laying down one's life for one's friends seems particularly relevant today, Constantine observes, as he carefully forms each letter of the familiar text. We have often discussed its meaning in theoretical terms, but today we may discover what it means to live these words rather than simply copying them. Serapion, who is scraping a piece of vellum with methodical strokes, nods thoughtfully. I find comfort in remembering that we are not the first Christians to face such choices, nor will we be the last. The apostles themselves face similar decisions about whether to obey earthly authorities or remain faithful to divine commands. Their conversation continues in this reflective vein. As the morning progresses, each young man contributing observations about the relationship between their faith and their current circumstances. But none of them speaks with bravado about heroic martyrdom or dramatic gestures of defiance. Instead, their words reflect the sober recognition that they have already made their fundamental choice and must now accept whatever consequences that choice might bring. The work itself provides a kind of meditation, the repetitive motions of copying text, allowing their minds to process the spiritual and emotional challenges they face while keeping their hands busy with meaningful activity. The familiar weight of reed pens in their fingers, the careful attention required to maintain consistent letter spacing, and the satisfaction of seeing pages of sacred text take shape. Under their efforts, create a sense of continuity with normal life that helps them maintain psychological equilibrium. As midday approaches, the 7 young men pause in their work to share a simple meal prepared by Marcian's mother, a widow who has opened her home to serve the Christian community in whatever ways she can manage. The food is humble but prepared with love. Lentil soup flavoured with herbs from her garden, bread still warm from her oven, and watered wine that provides refreshment without impairing their ability to work. During this meal break, they receive a visitor who brings news that will determine the course of their remaining hours of ordinary existence. Peter, an elderly Christian who serves as an unofficial messenger between different house churches, arrives with information about the Imperial soldiers' systematic search through the Christian quarter. His weathered face shows the strain of carrying dangerous news, but his voice remains steady as he reports what he has observed. The soldiers have arrested 12 believers since dawn, he reports quietly, accepting the cup of wine that Marcian's mother offers him. They are working systematically through the quarter, guided by informants who know which households practice the Christian faith. At their current pace, they will reach this area before evening. This news confirms what the 7 young men have expected, transforming their theoretical awareness of danger into immediate practical reality. Yet their response shows no panic or desperate planning for escape. Instead, they receive Peter's report with the same calm acceptance they have shown throughout the morning, as if they have already made peace with whatever fate awaits them. "We have time to complete the Gospel of John," Maximilian observes after a moment of thoughtful silence. "If we work steadily through the afternoon, we can finish our commitment to the Smyrna church before the soldiers arrive." The others nod in agreement, understanding that completing their manuscript work represents the most meaningful use of their remaining hours of freedom. They return to their tasks with renewed focus, working now with the knowledge that each page they complete may be their final contribution to the preservation and spread of their faith. The afternoon passes in concentrated effort, punctuated by brief conversations and the occasional arrival of other community members who seek news or offer assistance. The workshop takes on the atmosphere of a place where something significant is concluding, not with drama or crisis, but with the quiet satisfaction that comes from bringing important work to successful completion despite adverse circumstances. Denny finishes the illuminated initial that will mark the beginning of the Gospel, applying final touches of gold leaf that make the letter seem to glow within a light. Constantine completes the final verses of the text, his careful handwriting maintaining perfect consistency, even though he knows these may be the last words he ever copies. John and Serapion prepare the final pieces of vellum, ensuring that the completed manuscript will have properly finished pages. Marcian and Malchus work together to prepare the leather binding that will protect the finished work through years of use in the Smyrna community. As shadows begin to lengthen and the sounds of the city indicate the approach of evening, the 7 young men complete their manuscript project and begin the process of preparing for whatever comes next. They clean their tools carefully, store unused materials in proper containers, and organise the workshop so that others can continue using the space regardless of what happens to its current occupants. Their movements show no haste or anxiety, but rather the deliberate care of people who want to leave their affairs in order for the benefit of those who will come after them. Each task receives full attention, as if completing these final ordinary activities represents a form of prayer or meditation that helps them maintain spiritual focus in the face of approaching crisis. The sound of marching feet in the distance indicates that the Imperial soldiers have reached their section of the Christian quarter, moving door to door in their systematic search for believers who have refused to participate in the required sacrifices to Roman gods. The 7 young men hear these approaching footsteps without fear or surprise, recognizing that the moment they have been preparing for has finally arrived. But rather than waiting passively for a rest, they make a collective decision that will lead to their supernatural sleep. Gathering their few personal possessions and the completed manuscript they have created, They leave Marcion's workshop and begin walking through the city streets toward the mountains that surround Ephesus, seeking a place where they can pray together and prepare spiritually for whatever trials await them. As they walk through the evening streets, passing other citizens who go about their normal business, unaware of the spiritual drama unfolding around them, the 7 young men begin to experience the subtle alterations in consciousness that precede supernatural sleep. The familiar sights and sounds of their beloved city take on a dreamlike quality, as if they are already beginning to step outside the normal flow of time and enter a different relationship with earthly existence. Their destination is a cave in Mount Pion, a place they have sometimes used for private prayer and meditation, where they believe they can spend their final hours in peaceful communion with the divine before facing whatever consequences the imperial authorities might impose. But as they climb the mountain paths in the gathering darkness, guided by torches and their familiar knowledge of these trails, they move unknowingly toward a sleep that will preserve them far beyond the reach of Roman persecution, carrying them through centuries of change until they awaken in a world transformed by the very faith for which they are now prepared to die. Chapter 7. Sleeping Beauty's Court. Life in the Enchanted Castle. The 7 young Christians disappear into their mountain cave as your divine perception follows them through the final moments before their legendary slumber begins. But even as they settle into prayer that will become centuries-long sleep, the pool of reflection draws your attention to yet another manifestation of supernatural rest. This one emerging from a fairy tale realm where magic operates according to different laws than those governing mythological or historical sleep. The vision shows you an elegant castle nestled in a valley surrounded by forests that seem to shimmer with enchantment, their trees bearing leaves of impossible colours and flowers that bloom out of season. This is the domain where a princess known to future generations as Sleeping Beauty will soon fall under a curse of prolonged slumber, but today represents the final hours when the castle's inhabitants go about their daily routines, unaware that magical sleep will soon claim them all for 100 years. Unlike the other forms of supernatural sleep you have observed, this approaching enchantment will affect not just one individual, but an entire community. Servants and nobles, adults and children, humans and animals, all preserved together in a collective slumber that maintains the castle as a living tableau, frozen between one moment and the next. The scope and complexity of such magic intrigues you, representing a form of supernatural rest that serves purposes of protection and preservation rather than love, transformation, or spiritual transcendence. Through your omniscient awareness, you experience this final day from multiple perspectives simultaneously. The princess herself, the various courtiers and servants who populate the castle, and the fairy godmothers whose conflicting magics will create the circumstances leading to the century-long sleep. Each viewpoint reveals different aspects of a community functioning at the height of its prosperity and happiness, unaware that these ordinary hours represent their last experience of normal time for generations to come. Princess Aurora awakens in her tower chamber as dawn light filters through windows made of crystal, so clear they seem like captured air. Her room reflects the refined taste and magical resources available to royalty in this enchanted realm. Tapestries that change their patterns according to her moods, furniture carved from woods that never decay, and mirrors that show not only her reflection, but glimpses of distant places and times. Yet despite these magical conveniences, her daily routine begins with the same simple human needs and pleasures that characterize any young woman's morning. Her first conscious thought focuses not on royal duties or magical concerns, but on the spinning wheel that has begun to fascinate her in recent weeks. Despite warnings from her fairy godmothers about avoiding such devices, she finds herself increasingly drawn to the idea of learning to spin thread from raw wool, a skill that seems to offer a connection to ordinary human experience that her magical upbringing has largely denied her. Today, she has decided, will be the day she finally seeks out a spinning wheel and discovers for herself what attraction these simple devices hold. The princess's morning ablutions take place in chambers designed to accommodate someone whose beauty has been enhanced by fairy blessings, but her use of these magical conveniences shows no vanity or self-consciousness about her appearance. Water flows from golden taps that never run dry, heated to the perfect temperature by salamanders who live contentedly in the castle's magical heating system. Soaps made from flowers that bloom only in moonlight create fragrances that enhance her natural charm without overwhelming it. Mirrors reflect her image with clarity that reveals every detail, while somehow making her appear even more beautiful than she actually is. But Aurora's attention focuses less on her reflection than on her plans for the day ahead, particularly her intention to explore areas of the castle she's never visited in search of the spinning wheel that has captured her imagination. Her fairy godmothers have been evasive about her questions regarding such devices, offering vague warnings about ancient curses without providing specific explanations that might satisfy her curiosity. This mysterious reluctance to discuss spinning wheels has only increased her interest in discovering what secrets they might hold. Dressing in one of her simpler gowns, though even her simplest clothing is made from fabrics woven by magical creatures, from threads spun by moonbeams and morning dew, Aurora prepares for a day of exploration rather than the formal court activities that usually fill her schedule. The gown itself seems to understand her intentions, adjusting its length and fullness to facilitate movement through corridors and stairways she rarely visits, while maintaining the elegance appropriate to her royal status. Meanwhile, throughout the castle's many levels and chambers, hundreds of other inhabitants begin their own daily routines, each person and creature contributing to the complex life of a magical court that functions as smoothly as clockwork. In the kitchens, cooks prepare elaborate meals using ingredients that never spoil, and ovens that maintain perfect temperatures through salamander magic. Servants attend to cleaning and maintenance tasks made easier by enchanted tools that work with minimal guidance. Guards patrol corridors and battlements where no real threats exist, maintaining readiness for conflicts that will never come. The head cook, a motherly woman named Margaret who has served the royal family for 30 years, begins preparations for the day's meals with particular attention to the princess's favourites. Today's menu will feature dishes designed to please Aurora's refined but simple tastes. Fresh fruits from the magical orchards, bread made from wheat that grows golden in moonlight, and delicate pastries filled with creams flavoured by flowers that sing when picked. The preparation of these foods represents hours of careful work, but Marguerite approaches each task with the satisfaction of someone who takes genuine pride in her culinary artistry. In the castle's extensive gardens, teams of gardeners tend to plants that exist nowhere else in the natural world, roses that bloom in rainbow colours, trees that bear fruit in all seasons, and fountains that play music as water dances in patterns choreographed by water sprites. The head gardener, an elderly man whose knowledge of magical horticulture has been accumulated over decades of patient observation, makes his daily rounds to ensure that each plant receives exactly the care it needs to maintain the garden's supernatural beauty. The castle's library, overseen by a scholarly wizard who serves as both librarian and tutor, contains books that write themselves, updating their contents as new knowledge becomes available throughout the magical realms. Scrolls preserve the wisdom of ancient civilizations, while newer volumes record contemporary developments in magical arts and sciences. Today, the librarian plans to organise a collection of fairy tales that have been accumulating on his shelves, stories about magical sleep that seem oddly relevant given recent concerns about ancient curses affecting the royal family. Stable hands care for horses whose manes flow like liquid silver, and whose hooves never touch the ground when they run. Creatures bred from ordinary animals enhanced by generations of careful magical breeding. The horses require different care than their earthly cousins. Their feed consists of grasses that grow only in starlight. Their water comes from springs blessed by unicorns, and their grooming involves brushes made from phoenix feathers that maintain their coat's supernatural luster. In the castle's highest tower, the three fairy godmothers who have watched over Aurora since birth, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather discuss their growing concerns about the approaching day of Aurora's 16th birthday. Their conversation reveals the complex magical situation that makes today so significant. A curse cast by the evil fairy Maleficent at Aurora's christening, modified by their own protective magic to transform death into sleep, with all the complicated consequences that such interventions entail. The spinning wheel draws her like a lodestone, Flora observes, her voice carrying both resignation and determination. Despite all our warnings and precautions, she becomes more fascinated with the idea of spinning thread each day. It is as if the curse itself creates the very curiosity that will fulfill its conditions. Fauna, whose specialty involves the magical creatures that populate the castle and surrounding forests, nods with understanding born from years of observing how magical compulsions operate. Maleficent's curse was crafted with diabolic cleverness. By forbidding something normally harmless, she ensured that Aurora would eventually seek out the very thing we most want her to avoid. Our attempts to protect her by keeping spinning wheels away from the castle may have only increased her interest in discovering what we are hiding. Merryweather, the youngest of the three fairies and the one whose magic modified Maleficent's death curse into a sleep curse, paces back and forth as she struggles with the ethical complexities of their situation. Perhaps we should tell her the truth about the curse, and let her make an informed choice about whether to risk encountering a spinning wheel. She has a right to understand the danger she faces. But even as they debate these alternatives, all three fairies recognise that events have progressed beyond the point where simple interventions might prevent the curse's fulfilment. The magical forces set in motion 16 years ago have gained momentum that makes them increasingly difficult to deflect or control. Aurora's fascination with spinning wheels represents not mere curiosity, but the inexorable working of destiny shaped by fairy magic and supernatural compulsion. Throughout the castle, other inhabitants go about their duties unaware of the magical crisis approaching with each passing hour. Seamstresses work on garments that will never be completed, their needles frozen mid-stitch when the sleeping spell takes effect. Musicians practice pieces they will never perform, their melodies interrupted at notes that will hang suspended in air for a century. Courtiers plan entertainments that will never take place, their conversations preserved at half-completed words when magical sleep claims them. In the castle's great hall, preparations continue for the evening celebration of Aurora's 16th birthday, an event that has been planned for months as the culmination of her transition from childhood to adulthood. Servants hang decorations that will remain exactly as they place them for the duration of the magical sleep. Tables are set with dishes and goblets that will hold the same food and wine, untouched by decay or spoilage, until the curse eventually breaks. Flowers arranged in elaborate displays will neither wilt nor fade, preserved in perfect freshness by the magic that will soon envelop the entire castle. Aurora herself, still unaware of the specific nature of the curse that awaits her, spends the morning exploring corridors and chambers she has rarely visited, following an internal compass that seems to guide her toward whatever spinning wheel awaits her discovery. Her wanderings take her through parts of the castle that have been unused for years, where dust covers furniture and cobwebs drape abandoned rooms. But even these neglected areas show signs of the castle's essential magic. The dust never becomes thick enough to obscure surfaces completely. The cobwebs form patterns too beautiful to be entirely natural, and the air remains fresh despite the lack of regular circulation. Her search leads her gradually upward through the castle's many levels, past familiar chambers where she has spent countless hours of her sheltered life, toward tower rooms that have been declared off-limits for reasons never clearly explained. With each staircase she climbs, her anticipation grows stronger, as if she approaches something she has been seeking all her life, without knowing exactly what she hoped to find. The spinning wheel that awaits her discovery sits in a small, circular chamber at the top of the castle's tallest tower, placed there not by accident but by the careful planning of Maleficent's curse. The device itself appears ordinary, a simple wooden wheel connected to a spindle, designed to transform raw wool into thread through the patient work of skilled hands. But magical compulsion radiates from it like heat from a fire, creating the irresistible attraction that has drawn Aurora through weeks of increasing fascination toward this moment of inevitable encounter. As Aurora reaches for the spindle that will fulfill the curse's conditions, time seems to slow throughout the castle, as if the magical forces involved recognize the significance of this instant. In kitchens, cooks pause with spoons halfway to their mouths. In gardens, fountains freeze mid-splash. In libraries, pages stop turning. In stables, horses halt mid-stride. The entire community balanced on the edge of the transformation that will preserve them in perfect suspended animation for the century, required to fulfill the fairy magic's complex requirements. The prick of the spindle against Aurora's finger releases magical energies that have been building for 16 years, spreading through the castle like gentle waves of irresistible drowsiness. But unlike the violent sleep that might result from ordinary magic, this enchantment works with tenderness that reflects the fairy godmother's protective modifications. Each person and creature affected by the spell experiences the approaching sleep not as invasion or attack, but as the most natural and comfortable rest they have ever known. Aurora herself feels the magical sleep beginning as warmth that spreads from the tiny wound on her finger through her entire body, bringing with it a sense of perfect peace and contentment. She settles onto a nearby couch that seems to arrange itself for maximum comfort, her breathing slowing to match the rhythm of a heart that will beat, perhaps once each minute for the next 100 years. Her last conscious thought focuses not on fear or regret, but on gratitude for a life filled with love and beauty, and curiosity about what dreams might visit someone who sleeps for an entire century. The magical sleep that enveloped Aurora's castle created something unprecedented in the history of supernatural slumber. An entire community preserved intact through the passage of time, maintaining not just individual lives but the complex web of relationships and daily routines that defined their civilization. Unlike the solitary sleepers you had observed, from Endymion's divine romance to the Seven Sleepers' religious witness, Aurora's enchantment demonstrated how supernatural rest could serve as preservation not just of persons but of entire ways of life. The 100 years that followed saw the outside world transformed by wars, plagues, social changes, and technological developments that would have swept away the delicate courtly culture of Aurora's realm. Yet within the magical barrier of thorns that grew around the sleeping castle, everything remained exactly as it had been at the moment the curse took effect. Not just the physical environment, but the social structures, artistic traditions, and daily customs that had flourished there. When Aurora eventually awakened, she would bring with her a living example of a civilization that had otherwise vanished from human memory. The story of Sleeping Beauty's castle influenced countless generations of storytellers who recognized in her century-long sleep a powerful metaphor for the relationship between tradition and change, preservation and progress. The image of an entire community suspended in time while the world around them evolved became a touchstone for cultures struggling to maintain their identity amid rapid social transformation. Aurora's sleep represented the possibility that valuable things need not be lost to the passage of time, that beauty and innocence could survive even when the world grew darker and more complex. More broadly, the tale established supernatural sleep as a force capable of protecting what is precious from the destructive effects of time and change. Where other forms of magical slumber served individual purposes, love, transcendence, escape, Aurora's enchantment demonstrated how such sleep could preserve entire communities and their ways of life for future generations who might otherwise never experience such beauty and harmony. Aurora's transformation through her century of sleep differed fundamentally from other supernatural sleepers because she remained essentially unchanged while the world around her evolved beyond recognition. Her awakening would reveal not a person altered by magical rest, but someone who had become, through preservation, a bridge between vanished and present worlds. She represented the possibility that innocence and beauty could survive intact, even when everything familiar had been swept away by historical change. The other inhabitants of the castle underwent similar preservation rather than transformation, maintaining their individual personalities and relationships exactly as they had been. Yet their collective experience of awakening together into a changed world would create bonds of shared experience that transcended their original social roles, uniting them as survivors of a lost time who must learn together how to live in a new one. The concept of Sleeping Beauty's castle continues to resonate in modern times, as a symbol of places and communities that seem to exist outside the normal flow of historical change. Tourist destinations that preserve historical ways of life, traditional communities that maintain ancient customs, and institutions that serve as repositories of cultural memory all echo the essential function of Aurora's enchanted sleep. The story suggests that sometimes the most radical act is not to change with the times, but to preserve something beautiful and valuable exactly as it is. The tale also established the archetype of protective sleep that serves communal rather than individual purposes, inspiring countless variations in literature, film, and other arts. The image of an entire world preserved in magical slumber became a powerful metaphor for cultural continuity, suggesting that what is truly valuable will find ways to survive even the most dramatic historical upheavals. In the gentle breathing of the sleeping castle, time itself learned to rest, carrying forward through centuries of change the delicate music of a world that chose preservation over progress, beauty over practicality, and the eternal dream of perfect harmony over the harsh wakings that history demands. Aurora's slumber became not an end but a beginning, proving that sometimes the deepest love manifests not in staying awake for the beloved, but in sleeping long enough to meet them in a future worth awakening to discover.